In my third year as Ethan Carter's executive secretary, he got engaged, and his fiancée demanded he fire all female subordinates in close proximity. Guess who made the cut? Yep, I did. To soften the blow, Ethan arranged a blind date for me with his older brother. He's richer than you, better in bed, and yeah, he's got a kid, but if you don't mind, meet him. I didn't mind. Because that child? She's mine. Ryan Carter and I had a thing before all of this, something Ethan never knew about. If he had, maybe he wouldn't have tossed me aside like trash. Back then, I was just 22 and clueless. I mistook Raya, who was inspecting the docks that day in a dirt-covered suite, as a rejected job applicant like me. He looked pathetic sitting on the curb, dusty and eating takeout next to a stack of files. I had just been rejected too, was emotional, and I bought 2 boxes of pork rice. I handed one to him and said, "Yours looks sad. Here, double meat." I sat 3 feet away, quietly sulking about my future. I didn't even notice how intensely he was watching me, like he couldn't believe I was real. We ate together, talked about life, swapped names, and it felt like fate. I assumed he was ordinary, just like me. He let me believe it. We kept bumping into each other, by coincidence. I was stupid enough to believe it was destiny. Until one day, I saw him in a high-end mall buying luxury gifts like it was nothing. He was bent slightly, his hands in his pockets, guiding a girl through her shopping spree with practiced patience. He looked expensive, like someone who belonged in a world far from mine. That same man had been crashing at my rental apartment the night before, whining about work and asking me to rub his temples. I stood there realizing I was a side story in a romance novel, just not the lead. I didn't ask for compensation or cry. I called him out and left. But he didn't flinch. Instead, he told me the truth and offered to take me to his real home. The place? Basically a historic mansion that looked like royalty had once lived there. His study was filled with technical documents, blueprints, and meeting notes. That day I first met him, he wasn't some broke guy. He was at the construction site leading a crisis response for Carter Corp's port development. The lunch break on the curb was because they hadn't arranged meals. He was reviewing files and coordinating real-time strategies in the heat. And there I was, feeding the prince of a billion-dollar company, thinking we were just 2 losers bonding over pork. I laughed at myself later. How did I miss the luxury watch? The custom suit? He asked if we had to break up. Told me love was just love, but interests were king. I was 24 and too naive to accept that. I said we weren't the same. I didn't scream or cry, walked away like I had been laid off. But reality hit hard just a month later. My period didn't come. I was pregnant. And as fate would have it, the company began a wave of layoffs, especially targeting pregnant women. I swore to the boss I wouldn't let it affect my work. Took 3 days off to schedule an abortion just to keep my job. My boss was thrilled, called me an ideal employee. I felt like a beast of burden, a body without a soul. I hated myself for how numb I had become. But just as I walked into the clinic, Ryan's people intercepted me. He was overseas, but flew back immediately and asked me to keep the child. The offer was generous. I said yes, on the condition that I wouldn't get attached. I didn't even look at her when she was born. Ryan named her Kayla. I moved to Houston and tried to start over, but guess who ran the Southern Division? Ethan. I applied to dozens of jobs, didn't realize one of them was under Carter Corp. Again. I got hired. Executive secretary again. Same task scheduling, coffee runs, dealing with VIPs, keeping my head down. Good pay. I even bought a house using the money Ryan gave me. Life was finally boring, but in a safe way. Then Ethan's fiancée, Vanessa Blake, happened. That woman was high society incarnate, granddaughter of a political bigwig, daughter of some real estate mogul, basically drama in human form. She wanted all female staff near Ethan gone. Ethan had 2 chief secretary, 1 male, 1 female. The female stayed, she was too valuable. Me? I was disposable. I heard I'd be replaced soon. One day Ethan casually slid over the idea of a blind date again with his brother. I shut that down fast. No thanks, I said as I briefed him on his day. Also, you've got overlapping appointments at 2. Golf or horseback riding, choose one. He leaned back in his chair, turned slowly, tapping his toes on the floor. Then he tilted his head and smiled in that infuriating way. You're hiding something, Chloe. I sighed. Your brother and I knew each other. It wasn't serious. No one knew. It doesn't count. His smile dropped. No, you were with him, weren't you? That word with stung. I nodded. He stood up, walked over, and poured me tea like we were old friends. Come on, tell me. Who's Kayla's mom? None of us could figure it out. He hates kids. He must have loved that woman a lot. I stayed quiet. Is it that girl he went shopping with? Or someone else? I don't know who he loves, I said flatly. But it's not me. Ethan stared at me like I had grown a second head. Wait. You two lived in a rental apartment. I did, I corrected. He didn't live there. I paid the rent. Damn, he muttered. He couldn't even get you a flat? You're better than that, Chloe. I smiled faintly. Back then, I was naive. Let me joke about it now. But yes, maybe you could add a little to my severance. A knock at the door interrupted us. Meeting time. Ethan grabbed his folder and walked past me. You're not getting laid off. Go back to work. But forget about severance, you'll have to resign if you want out. Word had already spread about Vanessa's purge. People looked at me with pity like I was already gone. I sat at my desk, pulled out my resignation template, filled it in, and hit send. Thank you for the opportunity. Due to personal reasons, I'm resigning effective in 30 days. My fingers trembled, but I took a deep breath. In the silence, Ethan's voice echoed in my mind. He must have really loved her if he kept the child. And I had no idea what Ryan Carter actually felt for me. But I couldn't lie to myself anymore. The life I had was borrowed. It wasn't mine. And now I was ready to take it back. After submitting my resignation, everything suddenly became quiet, too quiet, honestly. I was still expected to complete my 30-day notice, but no one gave me any new tasks. It was like I was already a ghost in the company, just floating around invisible. The only thing I had left to do was hand over documents and smile politely while everyone stared at me like I was the Walking Dead. I started sending out resumes again, half-heartedly, and kept in touch with Andrew Foster, the associate professor I'd been set up with on that blind date. He was sweet in a quiet, reliable kind of way. Early 40s, calm demeanor, tragic backstory: his wife passed away from illness. And best of all, he didn't mind that I had a child. He even joked that since he had experience dealing with college freshmen, he could handle anything. I appreciated that kind of grounded energy. It didn't make my heart race, but it gave me peace. That Friday evening, we had dinner plans. I spent the whole day organizing handover reports for the next secretary, barely noticed time pass. When I stepped outside the office building, Andrew was standing across the street, holding a bouquet of tulips like a Hallmark movie extra. He smiled the moment he saw me, but didn't move. Why are you so far away? I teased, wrapping my coat tighter. Afraid my coworkers will spot you? He laughed and handed me the flowers. The restaurant's nearby. Want to walk? We strolled along the riverside path, watching waterbirds flap and skim across the water. It was chilly, but not unbearable. His voice was steady, telling me about campus gossip, grading headaches, and a student who submitted a paper written entirely by AI. But every few seconds, he glanced behind him like he was being followed. You okay? I asked. You keep checking behind us. I don't know, he said slowly. I just feel like someone's watching. Maybe someone wants your number, I joked. But something about the way his eyes stayed fixed on the shadows made me glance back, too. Nothing. Just strangers, street lamps, and the wind. We crossed the road at a green light, and just as we stepped onto the sidewalk, chaos hit. A food delivery scooter skidded sideways in front of us, the driver tumbling off, and Andrew, caught off guard, let out a groan. He twisted awkwardly and clutched his elbow. I rushed to help him sit down. Don't move, I said, panicking. Let's get you checked. Rideshares were full, so I flagged down an app car while cradling his arm like it was glass. At the hospital, A CT scan confirmed what I feared: elbow dislocation. They did a quick reduction and wrapped him in a plaster cast. His face was pale but still full of jokes. "Chloe, I'm not dying. You can stop looking like that." I insisted on taking him home. His apartment was on a university campus, clean, minimalist, and devoid of life. I whipped up a quick dinner, ignored his protests, and cleaned up. We sat and talked until nearly midnight. The whole time, I kept thinking about how calm it felt. Predictable. Safe. But not once did my pulse quicken. Not like before. Not like Ryan. He never left my mind. I drove home in silence, but I should have known better than to think peace would last. Monday came, and with it, a bombshell: the Carter Corp. Head office was sending executives down to the Houston branch for a surprise 3-day inspection. And yes, Ryan Carter was among them. My replacement secretary learned it before I did. Figures. I was handing over the final project files when my phone buzzed. A text from an unfamiliar number: "Come to the VIP lounge on the 43rd floor. Or I'll come find you." My heart dropped. Ryan. Of course. I told my trainee to go over the documents alone and headed for the elevator, my mind racing. I knew what floor it was, but I had no idea what to expect. I knocked gently, and the moment the door opened slightly, he yanked me in. It was dark, the lights off, and before I could find the switch, he wrapped his arms around my waist and slammed the door shut with his foot. "Ryan," I gasped, trying to breathe. He was drunk, his breath hot against my neck, reeking of whiskey and desperation. I tried to put space between us, but he pinned my arms gently above my head. His touch wasn't rough, but it was too much. Too fast. His hands slipped beneath my shirt, branding my waist with warmth. Our mouths collided again and again, each kiss more frantic than the last. I tried to catch my breath, but he whispered through ragged breathing, "Who've you been seeing?" And I knew he knew. I thought of Andrew's accident, and my blood ran cold. "Was that you?" I asked. "Was that your doing?" His hands froze. He stared at me wide-eyed, like I'd slapped him. "You think I'd do that?" he whispered, broken. "You think I'd hurt you?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. The silence made it worse. He pulled away, pacing like a caged animal, running a hand through his hair. "You took care of him. Wiped his sweat. Nursed him for a week. You only ever did that for me before." His voice cracked. "Now you think I'd sabotage that? Is that who you think I am, Chloe?" I swallowed. I hated myself for suspecting him. But I couldn't deny how things lined up. He dropped onto the couch, shirt wrinkled, tie loose, eyes bloodshot. "You were only ever good to me," he muttered. I turned on the light. He flinched from it like a vampire. "Ryan," I said quietly, "we're not anything anymore. You need to stop showing up like this." "You've moved on," he said bitterly. "That quick?" "I'm allowed to," I said. "You had your chance." I turned to go. He didn't stop me until I reached the door. Then, just as I placed my hand on the handle, he spoke soft, raw, and gutting. "Happy birthday, Chloe." My breath caught. I hadn't heard that in 4 years. It was just a sentence, but it punched straight through the wall I'd built. My legs gave out and I crouched down, covering my face with trembling hands. Footsteps approached. He didn't say another word. Just knelt behind me and pulled me into him, his chest warm and solid against my back. "Just this once," I whispered, cursing my weak heart. That night, we didn't go all the way. He lay still, eyes bloodshot, murmuring apologies as I cleaned him up. "I wanted to change your apartment after the break-in," he said softly. "But I didn't want you to suspect anything. So I placed security 2 floors above you." I stayed silent. I didn't wear the tie because I was scared people would think I'd gone bankrupt. I pressed my hand to his bruised arm. "How'd you get this?" "Delivering food," he muttered. "What?" "Don't ask," he sighed. Long story. The next morning, the office was buzzing. I walked in, pretending like nothing happened, but Ethan caught me before I could sit. "Zoo, Ryan came looking for you. Left something." "Did he say what?" "Nope. But he looked like hell." I faked a laugh. "He always does." I went into the break room to freshen up. My hands trembled as I fixed my makeup. I wasn't scared, just rattled. And then, just before lunch, I got another message. Come to my office. Kayla's here. I paused. My breath hitched. I wasn't ready to see her. Not after everything. Not after 4 years. But I couldn't ignore it. So I went. And when I saw my daughter run to me, arms outstretched, yelling, "Mom," in front of a room full of people, I knew everything was about to change. The room fell completely silent the second Kayla wrapped her arms around my legs and confidently called me Mom. My brain short-circuited. I stood frozen, my hand still clutching the gift box I had brought for her, while everyone, Ryan's family, house staff, even Ethan's fiancée Vanessa, turned to stare at us like I'd just hijacked a wedding. Kayla's little fingers clutched my calves tightly, her face beaming with a kind of innocent joy I didn't deserve. I lifted my gaze slowly and locked eyes with Ryan at the top of the stairs. He looked different, sharper, thinner, like time had stripped the warmth from his features and left behind bone and restraint. But his eyes, they were locked on mine, unreadable, before he blinked and started walking toward us. Kayla, he said, half crouching beside her, voice low and calm, be a good girl. Don't bother your aunt. Aunt. That single word felt like a bullet straight to my chest. Kayla paused, confused, and then repeated softly, Mom. Again, the room tensed. Ethan's jaw nearly dropped to the floor. Ryan didn't say a word, just gently pried her arms from around my legs. Kayla clung tighter. Kiki, he said firmly but gently, using the nickname I'd whispered once during those long nights, be good. Finally, she relented. Ryan picked her up, steady and silent, and looked around the room with that icy executive calm that made people fall in line. Sorry, he said flatly, the child hasn't seen her mother since she was born. She gets confused. And just like that, everyone relaxed again. Nervous laughter echoed around the room, but my blood had gone ice cold. Ethan nudged me and whispered, Jesus, Chloe, I thought I'd been bossing around my sister-in-law for 3 years. Don't do that to me again. I forced a laugh and nodded like everything was fine, like I wasn't shaking inside. Ryan glanced at the gift box and said in that smooth corporate tone, Miss Bennett, she seems to like you. Can I trouble you to keep her company for a bit? I looked to Ethan for backup. He waved me off. Go ahead. You've got the magic touch. Of course I did. I'm her mother. I took Kayla's small hand and followed Ryan down the corridor. The house was too quiet. Light from the windows streamed through antique glass, casting patterns on the carpet like broken reflections of my past. Kayla clung to Ryan's shoulder, but kept glancing at me. I kept my expression blank, professional. I heard you're resigning, he said suddenly, not even looking at me. Yes. No severance for voluntary resignation, if you're wondering. Still walking away from money just to prove a point, he murmured. It's not about pride, I replied. It's about not living under the thumb of your family anymore. Is that why you left Carter Corp? In New York too, he asked, finally glancing sideways. Because you didn't want to be tied to us? No, I said. Because I want to live a life that doesn't require tiptoeing around your last name. He stopped walking, adjusted Kayla on his arm. His forearm flexed as he supported her weight. You're dating that professor, aren't you? He asked. I didn't answer. Bring him here. Let me meet him. There's no need, I said, smiling tightly. He's just a normal guy. Not exactly your scene. How'd a normal guy catch your eye? He countered. You never were into average. You weren't average when we met, I shot back. You lied about being rich. That made you interesting. He smirked slightly. So you're punishing me now? No, I said, eyes locked on his. I'm protecting myself now. After a pause, he let Kayla down and pointed her toward the playroom. She ran off, but not without turning back to glance at me. The second she disappeared, Ryan leaned against the window, pulled out a cigarette, and fumbled in his pocket. He looked older suddenly, like the years had caught up to him in a single moment. I handed him a lighter. When did you start carrying this? You used to lose yours all the time, I said. Old habits. He lit his cigarette and exhaled slowly, the smoke curling around him like armor. Chloe, he said softly, I've always wondered why you left so easily. Just because I didn't tell you who I really was. That was just the final straw, I replied. The real reason? You didn't see me. Not really. Not even once. He didn't interrupt, just kept smoking, his eyes unreadable. I continued, you remember our 2-year anniversary? I spent almost $4,000 on a tie for you. It wasn't fancy enough for your lifestyle, but it was everything to me. I hoped it would become your favorite. You said you loved it, tied it around my wrist that night. But I never saw you wear it again. It just sat on your wine shelf, collecting dust. He said nothing. Then there was the break-in, I added. I was terrified. You showed up, beat the crap out of the guy, hugged me. But never once did you suggest I move to a safer place. You didn't even offer. You just told me not to worry. And I thought if you were broke, I'd understand. But you weren't. You just didn't think I deserved that kind of care. His jaw tightened. So, because I didn't throw money at you, I didn't love you? No, I said. Because you had money, but chose not to spend it on methods what told me everything I needed to know. His expression shifted, and he stared at me like I was something fragile. You always said money was your way of showing love, I whispered. Well, I never got any. He stubbed out his cigarette against the window ledge, forceful and angry. That's not fair. Maybe not, I said. But it's how it felt. Silence stretched between us. I turned to leave. I'll pick Kayla up later. But just as I reached for the doorknob, he grabbed my wrist, his grip firm, fingers trembling slightly. Stay, he said. I'll give you everything you want. Just don't walk away again. I looked at him, stunned. Kayla stood at the end of the hallway, clutching a stuffed bear, eyes wide. Is that my mom? She asked Ryan quietly. He nodded once. Yes. Why didn't she stay before? She asked. Why didn't she hold me? He crouched beside her and brushed her hair out of her face. Because mom has dreams. Sometimes grown-ups have to figure things out before they can come home. She nodded like she half understood and walked toward the playroom. I didn't move for a long time. Ryan didn't say anything more. But that night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying every little thing, his voice, her face, the way my name sounded when he whispered it like it was the only thing keeping him alive. And for the first time in years, I let myself wonder. Maybe coming back wasn't giving in. Maybe it was choosing myself too. The next day, Ethan pulled me aside and gave me a look. You really planning to leave? Yes, I said. Well, he said, glancing down the hall, better do it quick. Ryan's already talking about redecorating your old apartment. I snorted. He always gets ahead of himself. You know what's worse than heartbreak? Ethan asked as I turned to go. Regret. I paused. Yeah, I whispered. I know. But what I didn't know yet was that Ryan Carter wasn't done. Not even close. And neither was I. Even after everything that happened at the Carter estate, I tried to stick to the plan. I still had a resignation to complete, a job handover in motion, and a perfectly decent man waiting for me. But it was like trying to walk forward with quicksand dragging at my ankles. Ethan didn't assign me any new work, which meant I spent most of my time watching others rush around the office while I quietly packed up my digital life and scheduled last lunches with the people I actually liked. I was keeping things professional, but my mind kept drifting back to Kayla's little voice calling me Mom, to Ryan's voice when he told her I had dreams. I had a lot of things, but I don't know if dreams were still one of them. That night I brought dinner to Andrew like usual. He still had his arm in a cast and was managing life one-handed with admirable stubbornness. I made soup and something easy on the teeth because I wasn't sure how his painkillers were holding up. He smiled as I walked in, clearly trying not to look exhausted. I'm really fine, he insisted as I helped him settle on the couch. I know, I said. That's why I came. Not because you need me, but because you don't ask. He blinked at me like he wasn't sure what to say. We ate in comfortable silence, which used to calm me, but now felt eerily quiet. When I got up to wash the dishes, he followed me with his eyes and finally said, Chloe, are you okay? I didn't answer right away. He put down his spoon and leaned forward. You don't have to pretend with me. I know what's going on. My stomach dropped. Ryan came to see me, he said calmly, not angry, not accusing. He didn't threaten me or make a scene. Just sat across from me at the faculty cafe, like it was a normal Thursday. Said he appreciated me looking after you. Then he offered me stock tips. Oh my God, I muttered, covering my face. Andrew, I'm so sorry. Don't be, he said, chuckling. I made enough off those tips to pay off my student loans and fund next semester's sabbatical. He's a lot more generous than I expected. Which is part of why I'm saying this. Chloe, you're not here with me. Not really. I looked up stunned. I can feel it, he continued gently. You've got someone else in your heart. You try to be present, but your mind keeps going somewhere I can't follow. It's okay. You don't have to explain. Just don't lie to yourself either. I opened my mouth to protest, but nothing came out. We both deserve someone who chooses us completely, he said, not unkindly. And I think you're still trying to figure out who you really choose. I felt my throat tighten and tears sting the corners of my eyes. I'm sorry, I whispered. He smiled sadly. You don't have to apologize for loving someone. He stood up and walked me to the door. But Chloe, just promise me if you go back to him, go back for the right reasons. Don't go back out of guilt. Go because you still believe there's something there. I didn't answer. I just hugged him and walked to my car, the cold air biting my skin as I climbed in and drove off into the night. That was the last time I saw Andrew in a romantic light, and, honestly, I was grateful he had the clarity I didn't. I spent the weekend cleaning out my apartment, preparing for unemployment, and sorting through Kayla's old toys, some of which Ryan had randomly left at my place during his unannounced visits. The duck-shaped rattle she used to love had somehow wedged itself under the bookshelf, and stepping on it made me tear up out of nowhere. I called Ryan without thinking. He picked up on the second ring, his voice tired but alert. Do you want to see me? He asked after a pause. No, I said, trying to sound firm. I want to see her. Tomorrow, he replied. I'll bring her. Then he hung up. The next day, I cleaned the house like I was hosting royalty, updated Kayla's snack stash, and tried not to let my hands shake every time I checked the clock. But the knock never came. It wasn't until close to midnight that I felt someone slip into my bed, warm and slow and familiar. His lips brushed the back of my neck, and his voice rasped against my skin. Happy New Year. You're insane, I muttered. It's still November. You didn't say it last year. Or the year before that, he whispered, his body pressing against mine. I tried to wriggle free, but he was already wrapping himself around me, heat radiating through the sheets. The kid's coming tomorrow, I said sharply. You should be sleeping. I couldn't wait, he murmured. I wanted to see you. You saw me 3 days ago, I argued, but my voice lacked bite. He pulled me tighter and kissed the curve of my shoulder. Let's get back together. I froze. You can't just say that during a sleepover assault. She misses you, he said. So do I. I need time to think. Then take her to the park, he offered. Spend the day with us. Just once. For her. I agreed before I could convince myself not to. But as expected, we were late picking Kayla up from the airport because Ryan couldn't keep his hands off me, which led to a shouting match, followed by an emotional meltdown from Kayla. She cried so hard in the car that I felt like the worst mother alive. Don't be mad, Ryan begged. Daddy just took a while to convince Mommy. But she's coming with us, right? Kayla pouted. You promise. 3 promises, he declared, raising 3 fingers like he was swearing into Congress. Anything you want. Just stop crying. I rolled my eyes but kept my mouth shut. We finally made it to the new amusement park in Southside. It was packed, noisy, but Kayla's mood shifted the second she got her cotton candy. She walked up to me, tiny arms outstretched, and handed it over proudly. For Mommy. I blinked, not ready for the heat in my chest. Thanks, baby. I half squatted and hugged her. She was heavier than I expected. Ryan hovered behind me, arms out, ready to catch if I stumbled. You shouldn't carry her like that, he said gently. You'll strain your back. Buy me a drink, I replied. Or I'll drop her right here. He grinned and left. I sat down with Kayla under a shady tree and asked, How did you know I was your mom that day at the mansion? She shook her head. It wasn't the first time I saw you. What? Daddy shows me pictures, she said proudly. All the time. We even went to see you once. But he said we had to be sneaky and not bother you. I couldn't help but laugh and cry at the same time. When was that? A long time ago. I was little. But I remembered your eyes. My chest tightened as I brushed a crumb off her cheek. Were you mad that I wasn't there? She swung her legs and thought hard. A little. But I still love you. Ryan returned with drinks just in time to catch my expression before I broke down completely. What happened? He asked. I shook my head, wiping a tear. Nothing. Let's go. There's still a lot left to see. He watched me closely, then slipped his hand into mine. Okay, he said. Let's go be a family just for today. And in that moment, with Kayla laughing beside us and the world spinning in slow motion, I almost believed it could be forever. We didn't talk about getting back together again, not right away, not with words anyway, but something shifted after that day at the amusement park as if Ryan and I had both silently agreed to stop pretending like we didn't miss the life we'd left behind. Especially when Kayla was involved, especially when her little hand reached for mine like it belonged there all along, because maybe it did. Maybe we all just needed time to realize we were always orbiting back toward each other no matter how far we tried to spin off, and so we fell into this strange rhythm where Ryan would bring Kayla over with bags of toys and snacks, sometimes staying for a few hours, sometimes for days, but never announcing his arrival, never explaining. Just letting himself into my space like he still had a key, like I'd never taken it back, which I hadn't, and it became our version of peace, of coexisting, except now I didn't feel like I was suffocating in his shadow, because for the first time, it felt like he was the one tiptoeing around me, afraid I'd vanish again, and I let him, because I liked this new version of him, a one who peeled apples for Kayla while she sat on the counter swinging her legs. The one who remembered my favorite takeout order and didn't forget the dipping sauce. The one who didn't try to fix me, just sat near me while I worked, like presence alone was enough, but I also knew it couldn't stay like this forever. Especially once my resignation officially cleared and the paycheck stopped coming, and I had to admit to myself that I wasn't exactly jumping at the chance to rejoin the corporate world, so I did what any self-aware, semi-unemployed woman with a sharp tongue and a grudge against the system would do. I launched a self-media account, chronicling the tragic, chaotic, and occasionally glamorous life of an executive secretary at a billion-dollar company. And it turned out people really wanted to hear what it was like working for powerful, temperamental men in tailored suits who couldn't operate the office coffee machine without starting a small fire, and within a few weeks, my sarcastic morning vlogs, passive-aggressive listicles, and juicy but anonymized office gossip started gaining traction. So I kept going, adding behind-the-scenes bits from company parties, passive-flexing the fancy snacks from catered meetings, and subtly dragging men who couldn't tell the difference between urgent and I forgot to plan ahead, and before I knew it, I had brand inquiries in my inbox and PayPal tips from strangers who said I helped them survive their own cubicle nightmares, and somehow I'd built a platform from all the things I used to hide, and it felt good, liberating even. Like I was finally building something that was mine. No last name attached, no Carter signature looming over my shoulder, and the more I leaned into it, the less I worried about what came next, because for now I was enough, just as I was. And yet that didn't stop Ryan from showing up anyway, especially on the days I didn't expect him, like the Tuesday morning I was editing a video in sweatpants and greasy bangs when my phone buzzed with a message from Ethan. Heads up. Your ex is stomping around the Houston branch like he owns it again, brace yourself. And 10 minutes later Ryan walked into my building holding Kayla's backpack and a giant balloon that said "World's Coolest Kid," like it was some sort of peace treaty. And before I could even blink, Kayla was hugging my knees and Ryan was asking if she could stay with me for a few hours while he handled a board meeting upstairs. And even though I hadn't planned on babysitting today, I said yes, because truthfully, I always said yes when it came to her. even when I told myself I wouldn't, and a few minutes later I was sitting on the floor reading her some educational fairy tale that somehow turned into a lesson on tectonic plates and economic reform, and I was just about to throw the book across the room when the nanny finally arrived to pick her up for her homework session, and I was so exhausted I nearly collapsed on the couch. But before I could slip away, Ethan knocked on the door, peeked inside like a nosy brother, and gave me a knowing look. "You're not just the babysitter, are you?" I rolled my eyes. She was bored. "Ryan had meetings." "Uh-huh," he said, stepping in and closing the door behind him. "Don't call me Mr. Carter," he added. "Just Ethan. We're family now, aren't we?" I paused, pretending I hadn't heard that, but he wasn't done. "You're Kayla's mom, right?" I stared at him, saying nothing, but that answer was obvious and he knew it, especially when he sighed, walked to the window, and lit a cigar like this was suddenly his private office too. "You know," he said between puffs, "I was stupid not to see it sooner. The mole on her neck? It's the exact same as yours, same spot, same shape. It's like God stamped her with your face and thought no one would notice, and I wanted to laugh, but I didn't, because I didn't know where this was going, and Ethan just kept talking. My brother's been pacing around like a lovesick idiot ever since you left that day. He even made me sit in the garden with him all night while he whined about how you used to peel oranges for him, like that was the pinnacle of romantic gestures. Said he didn't tell you about his money because he didn't want you to stay for the wrong reasons. I told him if you cared about money, you would have run a long time ago. You stayed because you're insane, not because you're shallow," and I blinked slowly, waiting for the punchline, but there wasn't one, just Ethan shaking ash into a teacup like he lived here. "You know, he's been good. No mistresses, no drama. Ever since Kayla was born, the family stopped setting him up with socialites. All he does now is work, watch Bluey, and wait for you to come home, and I didn't know how to respond to that, so I pivoted. His arm had a bruise the other day." "Do you know what happened?" Ethan scratched his head. "Oh, that?" "He was delivering food." I blinked again. "Come again." "Yeah," Ethan said, deadpan. "Apparently it's part of some test project?" 3 cars followed him for protection, and he still managed to fall off the scooter. Scared the board half to death. They thought he was launching a food delivery empire. Now we're in negotiations with 3 venture capitalists who want in on a business that doesn't exist yet. I didn't even know how to process that, so I stood up, gathered my things, and told him I was leaving, but he stopped me. "You're really resigning, huh?" "I already did," I said. "Effective next week." "And after that?" "After that, I'm doing my own thing," I said, grabbing my bag. "Thanks to your brother's drama, I have enough content to last me months." "You're doing self-media?" he asked, brows lifting. "What, like gossip?" "Like survival," I replied. "Corporate trauma, passive-aggressive coffee orders, how to cry in the bathroom between meetings. You know, useful stuff." "Damn," Ethan laughed, following me out. "Even if you're my sister-in-law, I'm still gonna roast you if you expose me in a video." "Go ahead," I smiled. "You can't fire me anymore." And with that, I walked out, knowing full well that the next chapter wasn't just about rebuilding something with Ryan, it was about rebuilding something with myself too. I didn't expect the soft launch of my semi-chaotic self-media account to turn into something real, but 2 months in, I was getting ad offers, podcast invites, even a viral TikTok moment after I roasted a client who asked me to make the PowerPoint prettier by adding more fonts, and yet, in the background of all this digital success, Ryan kept showing up like a silent storm, not asking for anything, not demanding explanations. Just bringing Kayla by with her ever-growing collection of plushies. And art projects and pink backpacks stuffed with glitter and broken crayons, sometimes staying the night in the guest room without a word, sometimes leaving without a goodbye, and the rhythm was strange but comforting. Until one day I realized it had been 10 whole days since I last saw him, and when I stepped on one of Kayla's rubber ducks while vacuuming, I just sat on the floor holding that stupid toy in my hand and told myself not to call him, then called him anyway. And after a few seconds of silence, he finally answered with a quiet, "Do you want to see me?" And I said, "The child. Bring her tomorrow," and he just said, "Okay," and hung up, and I should have left it there. but I couldn't, because the air felt too heavy and the space too empty, so I started cleaning my closet at 11 p.m., finding old sweaters I never wore, birthday cards I never opened, and things I meant to throw away years ago, until the pile grew into something that looked like closure. But at some point, I got too hot to focus, even though the heating wasn't on yet, and I realized I couldn't breathe, and the next thing I knew, someone had slipped under the covers behind me, cold hands pulling me back against a warm chest, and I didn't need to turn around to know it was him, his voice already brushing against my ear like a memory. "Chloe, wish me a happy new year." And I muttered, "You're crazy. It's not even December," but he only tightened his arms and whispered, "You haven't told me that in 4 years," and when I tried to wriggle away, he rose behind me and pressed against me deliberately. And I swore under my breath as I rolled over and bit his shoulder out of frustration, but he only smiled into my neck and said, "You're not coming tomorrow, I know it." I couldn't wait, and when I warned him that the kid was flying in and we had to pick her up, he just kissed my temple and murmured, "Then let's be fast." But 2 hours later, we were definitely late, and by the time we got to the airport, Kayla was sulking in the back seat of the nanny van, arms crossed like she'd aged 5 years. In one tantrum, and Ryan, trying to save himself, leaned in with puppy eyes and said, "Daddy tried really hard to convince Mommy to come, and she just glared at both of us like we'd personally betrayed her, and when he said, 'We'll take you to the amusement park today,' remember? That new one you saw on YouTube," she pouted and sniffled, "You promised," and Ryan instantly replied, "I know, baby, I'll keep it. Anything you want, 3 conditions, make it 5, and I rolled my eyes so hard they almost got stuck, but somehow, we still made it to the park, and for a few hours, the world felt like it had hit pause, like we weren't the wreckage of a breakup, but just a slightly dysfunctional family figuring things out, and Kayla ran ahead with cotton candy stuck to her cheek and a new pair of cat ears on her head, and Ryan followed behind her like a golden retriever in a tailored jacket, carrying both her snacks and my coat, and when we finally sat down on a bench to breathe, Kayla offered me her half-eaten marshmallow stick and said, "For Mommy," and my chest cracked open in a way I hadn't expected, so I picked her up and she clung to me like I was her whole world, and Ryan tried to warn me, "She's heavy now," but I didn't care, not right then. Not while she was laughing into my shoulder and calling me her favorite person, and when he went off to get us drinks, she and I sat under that tree while she told me that Daddy showed her pictures of me every single night, said we couldn't bother Mommy because she was working hard to build a dream, and that she loved me even though she didn't understand why I wasn't around before, and I had to turn my face so she wouldn't see me cry. Because how do you explain to a 5-year-old that sometimes grown-ups break things they don't know how to fix, that sometimes love isn't enough to stop the fear? And when Ryan returned, he took one look at my face and froze, then handed me a lemonade and kissed the back of my glove-covered hand without saying a word, and in that moment I saw it. Really saw it. We were no longer 2 people circling each other out of guilt or nostalgia. We were standing still for once, in the same place, wanting the same thing, and the next few weeks blurred after that, filled with park dates and quiet nights and Kayla sleeping between us like a tiny human bridge, and even though we didn't talk about the logistics of getting back together, the closeness spoke louder than any contract, until one evening. I was making dinner and Ryan was flipping through my self-media comments, snorting at one troll who said I was obviously bitter and unloved, and he looked up, half laughing, half serious, and said, "Let's make it official," and I blinked, turning off the stove. "Make what official?" And he stood up, walked over, and wrapped his arms around my waist. "This," he said. "Us. The 3 of us. You, me, and Kayla. No more weekends only. No more halfway in. Move back with us. Or we move in here. Or we get something new. I don't care. I just want you." And for the first time in years, I didn't feel panic or hesitation. I just felt calm, like something had finally clicked into place, like I'd survived the storm and found the shore. So I said yes, not because I owed him anything. Not because of the past, but because this time, I was choosing it, choosing him, choosing us, fully aware of the mess and the magic, and a week later, we told Kayla together, and she screamed so loud the neighbors probably thought we'd won the lottery. And maybe we had, in our own way, because starting over doesn't always mean starting from scratch. Sometimes it means picking up the pieces with steadier hands. And now, every time I wake up to the sound of Kayla's laughter and Ryan's off-key singing in the kitchen, I remind myself of that girl who once cried over a tie collecting dust on a shelf, who once stood alone in a bathroom stall convincing herself she didn't deserve more, and I hold her tight, not in regret, but in gratitude, because she walked through fire so I could finally come home not to a man, not to a mansion, but to myself.